easy.
Oh, good. That saves me worrying about whether my little tiny computer can handle it. Okay, I guess we just jump right in. I'm still in the process of finding you guys all on the Get to Know You discussion board. So I'm getting to know most of you little by little, but still getting to know the rest. All right. Has everybody done the reading for this week up to this week? The Truth About Marriage and the Doctrine of Marriage, family?
I did.
Most of it. I think I have like a page or two left.
It's a lot of reading.
Of that one long chapter.
So much reading. It's a lot. It is a lot.
And it's heavy.
Yeah.
I agreed.
I saw it too late too because I was, since it's not due till Thursday, I wasn't thinking ahead enough. So that's okay. Got most of it done.
It'll be trial and error as we go throughout the semester.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. I have the questions pulled up, but of course we don't have to just go by the questions. Is there anything that particularly stood out to anybody about the reading this week? Who's that from?
Not me.
Oh, that's Amber. It's Amber's.
Yay!
The kids are calling.
I feel like the questions will help me just because I'm taking 5 classes and I am doing so much reading in all of them that I almost feel like everything that we're learning is somewhat meshing together. Do you know what I mean? So I sometimes I struggle a bit when I have to go back and write a discussion board to really remember specifically what I learned in that class. I don't know how to get around that for this semester, but I'm taking too many classes to keep them straight.
Yeah.
I'm kind of in the same boat and kind of feel the same way.
Yeah. Not to mention in this, which major are all of you?
Marriage and family.
Okay.
I am as well.
I'm doing university studies, but with the marriage and family as my minor.
What about you, Mackenzie?
I'm doing marriage and family.
Okay. I'm child development. So, yeah. They just all tend to blend together, and then some of them have the same material, and then you're reading some of the same talks from the same people, and yeah, so I can definitely see how it gets confusing.
It does just a bit. It does.
Okay. So does everybody have a list of the questions or know where to find the questions for the Zoom meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
All right. So if you'll pull those up, you can just look through them real quick and see if there's anything in particular that you really wanted to discuss rather than us just going down the list. Because we don't have to discuss every single question.
No, and there's many. There's how many? 17 questions. There's no way we could get through. How long are we supposed to meet? Does anyone know that?
About 45 to 50 minutes.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, it seemed like 10 minutes per person, however many were in the group, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. And we seem to have a big group.
I can start if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
So the second question, why do you think it's important that we study this talk at the beginning of the semester as opposed to the end? And they're referring to Elder Christofferson's talk, but I think, that talk paired with Sister Beck's talk and President Hinckley's talk and all of them, I think, are so essential into helping us kind of dive into this heavy stuff that you were talking about in this chapter that we read yesterday. Because I think it's like they mentioned, how crucial it is that we understand the whole purpose behind everything. Because if we don't understand the purpose of family and of marriage, then it's easy to get confused. I mean, listening to the video, a lot of what they were saying, I could totally, it even stumps me, how I would respond to them, because it makes so much sense what they say. But having this kind of solid backbone of our beliefs, I think helps us to remember, even if we can't express it in words, why we feel that marriage is so important and worth defending, even though we're not trying to, hurt anyone or anything, take away people's privileges, but it's just, there's a meaning behind it. There's a purpose for it. And I think that's why it's so crucial that we study it before rather at the end, so that we have something to hang on to along the way, I guess.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts.
I think it helps us put kind of a definition on it, because Ryan Anderson was talking about how they're lacking a definition of what exactly marriage is.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like us studying the doctrine beforehand, it's giving us that framework, what marriage is and its purpose, and not by the world standpoint, but by the eternal standpoint. So it's just kind of giving us the purpose, the limitations, what encompasses marriage. And so we know what is outside of marriage and what is inside the eternal definition of marriage.
Good point.
Any other thoughts anybody has on that question she brought up?
I have some thoughts, but I'm at a drive-up, so give me just a second. How's that?
Okay.
I'm getting a prescription. Give me just a minute.
Yeah, no problem.
You guys are a lot more advanced. I'm like, I haven't figured out how to pull it up on my phone.
This is my phone, so, it's still on the flip side of things.
I feel like those are coming back again.
Mm-hmm.
The flip thing.
No, but I know they're popular, especially for young families with kids, because they kind of like that they have something that they can text and call on, but not have tons of, internet access and stuff.
Yeah.
And, smartphones can be a little distracting. So.
Absolutely.
Some thoughts I had regarding the question that we're discussing is that I thought the doctrine and applications and principles was really good for understanding exactly how to defend the family effectively, because I think many times I've just been kind of defending application, and at times I find that a bit hard to just kind of go off of, because so many people have different ways of applying marriage in their lives, and oftentimes it's not really right versus wrong, but usually it's comes down to the principle and doctrine. And so I thought that was really, really good as far as kind of how that applies to the question of why understanding the principle and doctrine of marriage is so vital, because if we don't have that kind of foundation, we really don't have much to go off of as far as application.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I agree with you, Mackenzie. For me, that was the most significant thing that I learned this week, was the difference. And I think that helped a lot, because I recognize that there are certain parts of the gospel that evolve, that change. And then there are certain parts of the gospel that are steadfast and stay the same. And some people use the changing, the applications, because application changes. Some people use that to suggest that the doctrine, therefore, is changeable, but they're separate things. So understanding that marriage isn't an application, it's not something that is necessarily something that evolves. It's doctrinal, which means that it's consistent, it stays the same. I think that really helped delineate in my mind why it's something that can't be, it can't evolve, because it is what, there was a word that was used, comprehensive. It's comprehensive as it is. So it doesn't need to be expanded to become more comprehensive. It's complete as it has been given to us. So I thought that was very, very enlightening, because there are so many parts of the gospel that that you can change the application on. You know, there are so many things that you go, okay, how am I going to implement this in my life? You know, temple attendance for some people is once a week. For others, it's once a month. For others, it's, you know, once a year, depending on how far away they are from the temple. You know, that would be an application. But you can't change the doctrine of the covenants that happen inside of the temple. That doesn't necessarily mean that everything, that the application for everything, or that everything is an application to be changed. So I thought that was very, very interesting, the different definitions of different things in our gospel. It's shocking to me that I've reached the age that I am, and I didn't really ever understand. I have understood what the principle is, but I've never understood the difference between a doctrine versus an application. I've never separated those out in my mind. So it was amazing to see that.
Yeah, that whole section was from a book called Act in Doctrine. I think I have it on my shelf right now, actually. But yeah, if you ever want to learn more, like go more in depth into that about stuff, that book is a great.
What is it called again?
Here, let me grab it real quick.
While she's grabbing it, there's actually in one of my last classes, he's like gives a discussion where he teaches from the book, and you know, describing, kind of going into more detail about the application principles and doctrine.
Yep. It's called Act in Doctrine.
Okay.
By David A. Bednar.
Yeah, I'll definitely read that, because I thought that was amazing.
Yeah.
I was going to say too, like, I really agreed with what you're saying, because, you know, recently my daughter, she's in one of her classes, her teacher was, you know, saying how he says, I wish our Pope would change so quickly like your prophet does, you know, like, and he was saying how he's noticed like changes that our church has made that, you know, so recently. And it was kind of like, I was glad to remember, like, it's not so much that our doctrines, you know, it's not that our doctrine's changing, it's just the application. And I think that kind of having that understanding is helpful to us when we are having changes, to explain, okay, this is still, you know, like I was saying, like the backbone, you know, of, you know, but how we apply it maybe just is more relevant to our time or needs or the Lord's timing or whatever.
Absolutely.
All right, Cara, are you able to comment now?
Yeah, I was going to say some of the similar things, but I think that one thing that I've learned is that when we teach the doctrine, especially the creation, the fall, and the atonement, that's so powerful. And and I think that Elder Christofferson talked about that in that Why Marriage, Why Family. That those, and I think there was one other thing that he commented on. I don't have it in front of me. That he said, but he talked about the 4 things were needed in the success of the in teaching the plan. Was that me? I hope not. The plan of the family, and how all of that is so important on, you know, teaching the family and having that be successful. But the creation, the plan, the atonement, and having a place for the family to come, and all of that being so important, and having a knowledge of that doctrine. And that was important in his talk too.
All right. I think we did a pretty thorough job on that question.
Okay.
Any more comments on it before we move on to another one?
Nope, let's go.
Okay. All right. Any of the other questions that stands out? So one thing that kind of struck me today, for the videos and the new normal article and the video about the YouTube videos, what did you think? What kind of message did you feel like they were sending? I mean, I know the main focus of them was talking about how the family is changing, and so on and so forth. But I felt like there was a lot of other subtle underlying messages that just made me go,
Give me an example.
Mhm.
Well, let's see. The paragraph in the blog at the very, very beginning, it was talking about how there's still this idea of the traditional family, and it's lagging behind reality. So that, to me, that immediately applied even within the first paragraph, that they see people who are still in favor of the traditional family as unrealistic or in denial, or if I'm going really pessimistic, then stupid. But I don't think that's completely what she was saying, but it definitely gave that feeling that of kind of looking down on the traditional look. And they put up a straw when they gave the example of the woman who said, "Oh, this is sick," when she was talking about the homosexual movement. They do that a lot. They put up the most extreme version of a side in order to tear it down. Because if they say, this is one person's opinion on it, so this is how they all think, I don't know, it just seemed really sad to me, because I know I don't think of it that way when I think about the LGBT movement and so on and so forth. So I find it really sad when they're representing my view in such an extreme and toxic way.
I agree. I feel like there's a lot of pressure as well in society to conform. I have 3 teenagers, and I think that there is a lot of pressure as I've watched them grow, more so now than it was when I was a teenager. I think it's almost as if society has chosen a voice or a viewpoint, and to digress from that viewpoint, you're ostracized from society. It's like we have built these societal rules or laws as to what we've decided is acceptable. And if you're not a part of that, you are pushed outside of society. And in some ways, that's what that statement is saying when she says that people who still hold to this traditional view of a family, that they're lagging behind. What she's saying really is that they are falling out of society. They are leaving because society is moving ahead and you're still back here, so you're no longer part of the group. And I think that puts a lot of pressure on people and on our youth to conform to a way of thinking. And I think it's so interesting because in conforming to one way of thinking, they're losing their free will in some ways. I think what's so interesting is that in this push to expand freedoms, there are a lot of free thought that is being restricted, that is being cut off to the group. So you're exactly right. There are these little subliminal messages. So at the one time, while they're promoting one way of thought, they're also marginalizing another way of thought versus promoting free will and free thought for all, which it seems to be in contradiction to a lot of these expanding of freedom movements. They label it one thing, but that's not really what's going on.
Yeah.
Have you seen the Mormon message of it's like a college class, and there's 2 there's like a teacher kind of leading a discussion, and one of the students calls out a member of the church, this other girl, and saying how she's a bigot, basically, because, and so the girl gets really defensive and saying, you know, that the Mormon church is not, you know, hateful towards other groups and things like that. And so she goes and she meets with her bishop and asks him for advice. And it's neat because in the beginning, you know, she feels very defensive and she kind of, you know, puts up her guard, and they argue and things like that. And in the end, the bishop kind of helps her see, she approaches the girl again that accused her of that and says, you know, I want to understand where you're coming from. And would you be willing to hear where I'm coming from? And so they kind of, once they can understand, like, you know, I'm not trying to take away anything from you, but can you not take anything away from me? Right. And it's awesome. I love that video because it's a very approachable one for my kids to watch and kind of get a better understanding, because I love what you were saying, like, you know, the society is making kids feel like if you're not in agreement, then you are a hateful person, you know, and that's not it at all. You know, it's the opposite of what we want to do. So I don't know. I wish I could remember the name of it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, though.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was skimming through, and I think we might be seeing that one later on.
Probably.
Cara, Mackenzie, any thoughts?
I sometimes wonder if kids feel like it's I don't know if it's the right way to term it, but if it's a cool thing sometimes to support, if it's a cool thing to support those that, I live in northern Utah, and kids come out as being gay or bisexual quite often, and kids come and think it's a cool thing to be supportive of that. And so I sometimes wonder if that's they don't understand the doctrine behind family too. And so there's a lot of kids that are, I'm trying to be really careful. They're choosing lifestyles because it's a cool thing to do rather than because it's who they really are. And so I just think if we just have to teach our kids so carefully, and so that they understand doctrine. Mm-hmm. And so
sorry, Kara, I thought you were done.
No, go ahead. No, you didn't interrupt me. I just am trying to just choose my words carefully.
Well,
just go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm done. Go ahead.
You go.
I don't want to offend anyone, and so I'm trying to just choose my words really carefully. And anyway, go. I'm done.
We're talking about difficult topics, so it is, you know, we do have to be careful, but at the same time, I think we can also choose that we're in an educational setting, so sometimes we're throwing ideas and we're trying to formulate ideas about things that maybe we haven't completely formulated yet. So I think if you were to say something that maybe wasn't quite right to someone else, I would hope that we would be free and open enough with each other to kind of talk that through and figure that out together as a group. I would hope. So, but to riff off what you're saying, I also think that as I've watched my teenagers, and I worked in a junior high for a few years, and one of the things that I think is that it is difficult to, I don't know necessarily how to explain this. I feel like that once upon a time there was a wide range of what was considered acceptable and masculine. And it seems that now with a broadening of what is acceptable gender assignments, the further away a male is from the stereotypical masculine, the more likely he is to be labeled not masculine, the more likely he is to be labeled homosexual, metrosexual, bisexual, versus accepting his display of masculinity as still an acceptable form of the masculine. So if you have boys who are interested in choir or interested in drama, or who are maybe just a little sweeter, who don't chase girls, if you have boys who are like that, they are more likely from a young age to be labeled or filtered into the homosexual, bisexual, or, the metrosexual would be like, obviously they're still considered straight, but I think that that's a gateway then for a child then to further investigate, well, am I really heterosexual? Because everyone is telling me, well, maybe you're gay, or, have you considered that you're gay before? You like this and you do this. So I think I look at I have 2 sons, and I just feel like for them to walk out the door and just be who they are is under attack, because for them to just display their form of masculinity, they're often, well, I have one son in particular, he's not necessarily accepted as a normal form of masculine. He must be then a different kind of gender, and that's not necessarily the case. There are lots of men who enjoy dance or who enjoy the arts, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they are homosexual. But when they're 8 and 9 and 10, and that's how young they are, when they are discussing amongst themselves gender, it's confusing for the children as well. It's confusing for them, because when they are looking to their peers and when they're looking to society, and society is filtering them a certain direction, I don't think it's uncommon at all then for a 12 or a 13-year-old to start questioning, or even younger to start questioning, well, what is my gender? And if he looks to his society to tell him what that is, depending on how he displays his masculinity, it could be very easy for society to tell him, you're gay. You're gay. So it may not necessarily even be something that is truly who he is, but a result of how he is reflected by his society. Am I making sense in what I'm saying?
Complete sense.
Yeah.
Absolute complete sense. Yep. Yeah.
Kenzie, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just I'm actually really enjoying this, because like this is something I not struggle with, but just often think about, just because I'm kind of with Kara. I'm very careful with this topic because I don't want to offend people, and I know you guys won't get offended or whatever, but it's just kind of the world we live in. And kind of with my family is predominantly not LDS, and so I do have family members who are gay couples with children, and just very different family structures all over kind of the board. And I often see my family members live gospel standards within these kind of families, and they have, strong families. And so it's kind of hard for me to completely understand, I know Heavenly Father loves them and maybe not approves of their family structure, but they are, I don't know, I'm not making sense. I'm still trying to formulate this and stuff, because I really care about my family, obviously. And but the thing is, I do understand most of my family do not agree with the doctrine that I know to be true, and I know that's what it comes down to. So their application can really look similar to my family structure. And so I don't know, it's kind of hard to change someone's mind about doctrine when they're so set in maybe the way that they believe, or the way that, their own kind of doctrine, you could say, affects their application. So I don't know, I'm just enjoying it. I don't really have much to say. I'm just trying to still in the process of just understanding it all. So it's kind of confusing for me, but it's good.
You know, Mackenzie, I live in Utah, but I'm actually from Portland, Oregon. That's where I grew up. That's where I'm from. So I've only been in Utah since I've been an adult. And I have an uncle who's gay, my favorite uncle in the world, love him. And my favorite aunt in the world is also gay. Some of my best friends growing up were gay. Some of my best friends now are gay. So for me, because of where I'm from, I know that Utah is quite sheltered and is probably known to be quite sheltered, although not all of Utah is very sheltered. But, you know, I'm in Utah County, so Utah County is pretty sheltered. But that's not actually where I'm from. So I totally get what you're saying when it can be confusing. It can be confusing to rectify the love that you have for people, and the good that you can see in them, and then a doctor. And so it is difficult. But I don't know how old you are, but I'm in my late 30s. We won't go into details. But as I've gotten older, it has become easier for me to understand how I can feel all of that at the same time, how I can 100% believe in a doctrine and 100% love my family, and that they don't have to be conflicting. And I think I feel like personally that is the biggest problem with the changes to marriage or you know, any kind of an LGBT movement that is going on, is that it is represented as something that is in direct conflict with organized religion. And I don't think it has to be. I don't think it needs to be. And I think that that's a lie, in fact, because I do believe that God loves all of his children. I'm a mother. I love all of my children. If I had a child who was gay, it would not change my love for that child. And I think that the love that I have for my children is the closest thing that I can grasp as to what God must feel for us. So if I would love my child, then I know that God must love his children. So I don't think that there needs to be as much conflict in our society about organized religion and, you know, homosexual anything. I don't see that there should be as much conflict as there is. I think that society holds us up as enemies, and that's not what we should be at all. So hang in there. It'll get easier as you get older, I think.
No, I agree. And I think that's true. Like, if you think about it, like, I think a lot of times people who maybe have, homosexual feelings or maybe label themselves as gay or something like that, you know, they're trying to defend something. But when it comes to, like, our religion, if we dare defend our religion, it's taken completely the wrong way. But I think, you know, just kind of not being offended by it, but just being understanding and just knowing, like, we think differently, and I think that's okay. And like, I agree with you. I think it's a learning curve, and I think it'll get better as kind of I go along and stuff. And, you know, it kind of goes back with the doctrine thing. As long as I know that, you know, I think this will get easier kind of to guide myself through this.
I think
100%.
a thing that I'm hearing in all of our topics for this thing is there's a lot of conflict and so on and so forth, and and there's a lot of confusion, whether it's choosing your roles or how to support or not support different people's decisions. And I think what it comes down to, what is causing a lot of confusion and what is actually the solution to a lot of the issues, is the concept of love. Because on one side, we want to love the people, like the aunts and uncles, friends that are coming out as gay and lesbian. We want to love them. And so we're struggling between, one, making sure they know we love them, and yet still standing firm in our beliefs.
Yeah.
And without doing that in a way that we don't want to hurt them with. And I think that's what it comes down to, is we can still be firm in our beliefs that we know that marriage is meant to be between a man and a woman for a lot of the reasons that was laid out in the talk. But that doesn't mean we have to love them any less. And we can still hold conversations with them. We can truly try and understand where they're coming from and have And when we're open to understanding where they're coming from, they're more willing to understand where we're coming from as well. So if we're wanting to other people to be open to our thoughts and ideas, we also need to be open to other people's thoughts and ideas. That doesn't mean we have to adopt them. It just means we need to be open to listening and trying to understand them.
I was going to say that there's a page called Mormon and Gay on the, if you go to the LDS.org website or whatever, and it has some great videos, but then stories that go along with it. And I just felt like it really helped me to see how, you know, it shows kind of like how some of these people shared with their family that they felt that they were gay, and the family's response, and over time how things improved in their relationship. It wasn't always a smooth start, and I really appreciated that, those websites, to help me better understand for, you know, the people in my life that I have. I was gonna just go back a little bit to what Melissa was talking about earlier, if that's okay. Just my daughter, she's, you know, she's at high school, and she's this beautiful, tall Polynesian girl, and she's, you know, she does Polynesian dancing, all this stuff, but she's also into lots of sports. And so she likes to wear basketball shorts sometimes to school, or t-shirts, you know, and so she's been questioned like, oh, are you gay? And she's like, really? You know, like, because of, I can't wear, you know, basketball shorts, you know?
Right.
And so it was really neat, because at the time when that first started happening, I was, I don't know, one of these family classes I was taking, and we were focusing on the family proclamation and helping her understand, because, you know, it puts questions in their heads, you know, if you like sports and you're a girl, like, oh, you know, and so helping her understand that we are created in God's image. And when we say that, we have a Heavenly Father and a Heavenly Mother. And so helping her to, and also understanding the fact that we didn't come to earth and all of a sudden become a girl or a boy. Whatever we are now, we were in heaven in the pre-existence, and will continue afterwards, except for the, you know, I think everything will be sorted out with the gay and things like that afterwards, I think, as far as I understand. But but I think understanding that kind of helped her get a better, like, okay, you know, like I don't have to worry, like, I know who I am, and I, you know, can hold on to those things. And I think that, you know, what you were saying before about getting confused, sometimes people, I think, go that direction because somebody may have said something when really maybe they're not, you know, or maybe, I don't know, whatever. But I think I'm just so grateful that we have the proclamation to kind of fall back on and remind us who we are, what our purpose is, where we're going, and can be helpful.
I agree. I had a question that I'd like to talk about if we still have time. We have a few minutes. I thought 14 was really interesting. It says, how many of the driving threats to children and families, how are many of the driving threats to children and families rooted in selfishness? It's all about me. And I thought that was really interesting because I know I feel like a lot of the threats to the family unit, to children and families, they're rooted in wanting something that isn't necessarily being offered to you. And one of the things that I wish people knew is that for me, it's not about not accepting someone else. it's not about a hatred for someone else. It's about a love for God. And I do feel like, I know that we were supposed to work on not bringing God in, but that is hard for me because how do you not involve him? He's like the creator, he's God. But I just feel like he's been forgotten. He's just been forgotten. And it's not about, not, trying to withhold marriage from someone else. And to even think that I, as a voter in this country, have the power to give marriage to someone, I think it is selfish because I don't have that ability. You don't have that ability. We don't own it. It doesn't belong to us. It belongs to God. And he'll give it to who he chooses to give it to. So I just think that if we were to everyone, step back and really stop thinking about ourselves and start putting God first, certain things just have to fall in line if he's at the helm. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think most of the threats are, as I was thinking about that question, I'm like, most of the threats are selfish behaviors that are driving families apart and are a threat to families and children. I mean, there's pornography, there's abortion, there's alcoholism and drug abuse, and so many of them. As you go through and you list all of those threats, I'm like, selfish behavior after selfish behavior after selfish behavior is, and I'm like, I'm trying to think of one that isn't like a selfish and behavior, and I'm like, I don't know one that couldn't be named one that's not. Maybe there is one, but it would be down the list in some regard. That's not a selfish behavior in some way that could destroy a family, and that's what Satan wants it to be.
I agree. Well, I even think I went through a divorce several years back, and the most difficult thing for me in making that decision was trying to see, was I doing this because of what's best for the children or because I needed out? You know what I mean? Trying to weigh that. Am I being selfish? Am I actually doing this for my children? Or is it just because I can't do this anymore? You have to ask the hard questions, and it's difficult. So I think I agree with you, actually, and I don't think that there's probably any threat to the family that isn't in some way based in a form of selfishness.
Selfish.
Yeah.
Which is so stinky, because if we could just get off, like, if we could just quit being selfish, think of how wonderful the world would be, and how much better our kids would be and how much happier our families would be. But it's just like, I don't know.
I was thinking with that, it would be wonderful, right? But that's the whole, thing is, we're imperfect, and that's why we're here. And so I think with all of that, I think we have to, maybe at least I have to remind myself the importance of looking at people through their eyes. And I think a lot of times they don't realize maybe that they're being selfish. And so I can be a little bit more sympathetic to them, because I know I do things sometimes that are selfish and I don't realize it. And then afterwards I feel horrible about it.
And that's when we go back and say, I am so sorry. I did that so bad.
Right.
I totally handled that situation wrong.
Right. And so I think, if we can understand we're all dealing with the same selfish sickness, that maybe hopefully we can use that as a common ground to work together and say, you know what, I struggle with this. I want to do better at this, and then we can, I don't know, maybe help build more unity if we're all recognizing that we all need help. I don't know.
That
Yeah,
makes
you're
perfect sense,
right.
Amber.
Yeah.
I agree with that because I think, maybe, I mean, we all have selfish tendencies to something, and maybe it's not really a direct threat to family or children, as big as maybe some of the problems like pornography and abortion. But I think it is important to remember that, we are human, we make mistakes, but I do feel like finding that connection is a really good starting point in helping those who maybe don't realize they're selfish, but maybe we can help them. And I think maybe a lot of times in our society, it's us versus them when it's really us and them versus the problem. And I think if we started having that mindset, we could really start helping our children and families. I don't have children, but you know what I mean. So, but I think I really like that comment.
I think it might even help rather than having a mindset of us and them at all. It's more of us. I mean, we're all children of God.
Mhm.
And the people who believe differently they're trying to make a world a better place in the concept of their understanding. It's not a full understanding, and it's they don't have all the knowledge, but they are trying to make the world a better place in the way that they understand it. So if we can try and see it as that way, rather than that we need to be against each other, rather we can work together we're not going to change people's viewpoints all at once. Most likely we're not going to, but we can still work together if we're willing to put aside our differences in order to find something that works for both rather than just one side or the other. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does it ever feel like that there's just no way to unring the bell? Does it ever just feel like, though, in society that it's just reached a point where it almost, I don't know, maybe it's because I have kids and they're teenagers and they're just at this age where I don't 100% trust them yet. You know what I mean? Because they're not like 19, 20-year-old age. They're like 16 and 14, and they're starting to experiment with the world, and it's really scary sometimes as a mom. And I just look around me sometimes and I think we're fighting to try and maintain some sort of a homeostasis between the world and God. And it just seems like it just seems like we can't, I just don't think that we can possibly claw back what God would need us to claw back to maintain that as a society. And so why do you think he has us working and trying to go out into our community and try and make this change? What is it that you think because I mean, for example, gay marriage is legal. Do you really think that anyone is ever going to move that back?
No.
I mean, is that, I really don't think that that's going to be reversed anytime soon. So why do you think God has us, although I do think that abortion could possibly be reversed. I've seen a lot of progress there. But why do you think he has us in our communities fighting so hard? Maybe fighting is the wrong word. Working so hard to fix or to maintain what is so clearly slipping away. Why do you think that is?
Have you guys ever heard the story of the starfish?
No, but it sounds delightful.
Well, trust me, I promise I'm not going off on a tangent. It does relate. There's a girl walking along a beach, and there's hundreds of thousands of starfish on the beach that have been washed up from the tide, and they're going to get all dried up and die if they don't get back into the ocean. So she just starts picking them up and tossing them back into the water. And a man comes by and he says, "What are you doing? You're not there's thousands and hundreds. There's no possible way you can save them all. You're not going to make any difference. And then she just bends down, picks up another one, and tosses it back into the ocean. She says, I made a difference to that one. And I think that kind of embodies kind of what my feelings are in regards to your question, is that, yeah, it sometimes feels like we're fighting a losing battle, or we're working so hard for something that's not going to happen. And the thing is that when we stand up, when we stand in defense of our beliefs, we're standing as an example to people. And that can give other people the courage who maybe they're wavering between one side or the other. It gives them the courage to solidify their own beliefs and join our cause. Or it has somebody has chosen the other side but is feeling really lost and confused and hasn't learned about the other options. When we stand up and they see that example, they can see there is another option. There is something else I can choose. So in the long run, in the earthly sense, it doesn't seem like it'll ever make a difference. But in the eternal sense, and to the worth of a soul, sometimes just standing as an example and can mean so much to people.
Yeah,
I feel. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mackenzie.
Oh, no, you're good. If you want to go ahead, you can go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I've talked way too much. Go ahead.
No, your comments are awesome. Yeah, I really like what you said, Sapphire, because I think, maybe it doesn't look like we make a huge difference by standing up for our beliefs when, maybe the law is already passed. But I really like Abraham Lincoln says, the law cannot give me the right to do that which is wrong. And I think regardless of the law, it doesn't change truth. And it doesn't mean that we should stop working towards promoting that truth, regardless of whether the laws, coincides with what we believe. That's just my 2 cents with that.
I love that quote. I think what I come back to for me personally is that I don't know at what point or what parts of life experience that I've been given on this earth is part of my salvation. But I would assume that being one of the few who's willing to stand up against a tide, pushing against God, being one of the few to stand up and say, no, that's not correct. That's not right. That at some point must play into our own salvation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we can't all be the successful ones, I guess is what I'm trying to say. We can't all be the person who actually necessarily wins that particular battle. But some of the most amazing stories are of people who stood up in the face of adversity and weren't necessarily successful on a societal level. But their testimonies live on through time, don't they? Their testimonies live on to say, it was wrong, or that was wrong, that wasn't right, even if they weren't necessarily successful in changing everyone around them. So perhaps it's not just about what happens here today or tomorrow. Perhaps it's about what is going to happen in the eternities. And when we meet our Maker, can we say, we did our best to speak for you. We did our best, regardless of who listened, even if no one listened.
Well, and for me, it's important for me to continue to teach my kids. I have a couple of, my kids are all, my youngest is 19. And for me, it's important to teach my kids because I have a couple that are still trying to figure out if what I've been teaching them for, all of their 26 and 24 years is important. And if the things that, we taught them from the time they were tiny is important. And so I think that even as a mom of adult kids, it's important for me to continue to still teach those doctrines and those values, even though they're not at home, even though they're married and have kids of their own. And so, the teaching still continues even once they're married and gone. And so, yeah, it's just the teaching continues even once they're gone. My responsibility doesn't. My
And
responsibility of a mother doesn't end even once they're gone. And I have even, I think, more responsibility now that I'm a grandma, because they are they're not getting the teaching that they need from their parents. And so I feel like I have even more responsibility.
Yep.
So
we always have a responsibility.
yeah.
All right, we've gotten our time, and I'd love for this to go on forever. I feel like this is a great group. We could talk forever. But I do have a class to get to.
Good discussion, guys.
Yes, it was great. So just a few things to, like, business matters to fill up, because at the end of each discussion, we're supposed to kind of like summarize, like someone is supposed to like kind of keep track of what we've been talking about.
Oh,
And
shoot.
yeah, it's a little confusing. So, but so I'm just kind of been keeping track. So we talked about our thoughts on the talk, and how it relates to families, and how it's really important to kind of have a framework or a definition of family. We talked about, here, let me pull up the question, the things I was writing real quick. We talked about like how some things are, a lot of the decisions of the day are fueled by selfishness. Yeah, we talked about a lot of things. So yeah.
I'm looking at there's supposed to be 3 roles that we fill.
Yeah.
It seems to me like, Sapphire, like you've done all 3. And I almost wonder if that is an easier way to do it versus having 3 different people trying to, maybe it's just easier for the one person to schedule the meet or to send out the link, lead the discussion and track it, and then move on to someone else. Does that sound more realistic to you guys? Or do you like the 3 different ideas, the 3 different roles?
It's specified in the video that she did want us to switch roles so we can all kind of get experience. And especially with the discussion leader and summarizer, because it's kind of hard to try and keep track of everything everybody's saying, and being the discussion leader and making sure everybody's getting a say. So, and then setting up the meeting can be a little difficult. So once if for the person who set up the meeting, they set up the meeting, and then all they have to do is press record, and then they're
done for the rest of the time. Okay.
Yeah, they're done for the rest of the time. So we'll just
so that we're in sync for next week.
Well, I guess we could either try and do some kind of chart where we're rotating through systematically, or we can just say, hey, who wants to do this next week?
I'm fine doing that. I'm a bit more laid back though, if someone else wants to share. I can send out the link for next and record it and then submit it. I've actually never done that before ever in any of my Zooms, so we'll see if that goes well.
Yeah, and just let me know if you need any help with that, because I've done that plenty of times.
Okay. I might
just so you know, I guess my maiden name is Halliday, but my married name is Nan. So I don't know how it's showing up. This is I'm at the end of school, and I don't know why this is the first time I've ever had issues with this, but yeah. So and I'm happy to lead it or summarize it either.
All right, so Melissa's going to host it, so she'll record it and then submit it and so on and so forth. Amber, you want to be a discussion leader?
Sure.
All right, Cara, Mackenzie, you want to summarize it at the end?
Yeah, I could summarize it.
Yeah,
Okay,
so you'll just be keeping notes throughout while we're talking and then summarizing what we talked about at the end.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Thank you, ladies. We'll see you next week.
Yep, it was amazing meeting you all. This is going to be a great group. I'm already so excited for the rest of the semester. So,
all right. Take
Thanks
care,
for
everyone.
setting it up. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.